The sky with the gray core is always the suppressed grayish yellow, like a thick rag covering all hope. Lin Jing squatted beside a ruin, holding a raw crowbar in his hand, staring at the iron plate under his feet that was half buried by the sand. This place was once a small colony site. I heard that it was still able to move forward a few decades ago until the resources were exhausted and everyone ran away, leaving only these ruins. Lin Jing didn't expect to get any money-worthy stuff. He could find some waste metal particles that were not cleaned. He would burn a lot by changing a few synthetic protein bars. He wiped the sweat from his face, and the sand made his skin feel painful. He lowered his head and pried open the iron plate, revealing a pile of broken circuit boards and several broken pipes underneath. Lin Jing sighed, squatted down and flipped over it, barely picked out a few pieces of complete parts and stuffed them into the backpack. This job is boring and tiring, but he doesn't have to choose. In this broken place, no one will give you employment, and if you want to survive, you have to do it yourself. He stood up, patted the dust on his hands, and prepared to walk deep into the ruins, and heard that there was an old mine there, saying that he might be able to get some money-worthy mines. At this moment, a deep bird suddenly came from the horizon, as if some big guy was moving. Lin Jing glanced at her eyebrows, raised her head and squinted her eyes to look there, and saw a group of black shadows looming in the sand. He felt a little nervous. This sound was not like a broken sandcar on the wasteland, but it sounded more like a certain kind of flying vehicle. Where's the flying vehicle such as the core of the Gray? Could it be that which scavenger group got what rare goods? Or say, are outsiders coming? Without thinking too much, he found a broken wall corner and squatted down, took out the homemade electric rod at his waist and grabbed it tightly. This thing is not very powerful, but at least it can catch people off guard. He held his breath and stared at the dark shadows as he grew closer and closer until he saw the wheels of the thing clearly, a huge metal skeleton, like a piece of some kind of flying boat, dragging a black smoke and tilted toward the depths of the ruins. There was a huge sound, and the ground shook, and the sand was raised high, covering the sky and the sun. Lin Jing was stunned for a few seconds, his heart beat like a drum. What is this? Flying a boat? Where's the broken place such as the core of the Gray? Where's the flying boat crash? There were a lot of thoughts in his brain, but in the end he was curiosity. This kind of thing may be worthwhile. If it is sold to the black market on the wasteland, it can change a lot of material resources and make it eat for half a year. He gritted his teeth and decided to go and take a look. He carefully traverses several ruins and approaches the landing point. The sand dissipated, revealing a huge pit. In the pit, there was a strange metallic skeleton, with scorched marks on the surface, and some strange blue light flashing around it. Lin Jing stood by the pit, looked down, and his heart was furious. This thing is obviously not made by humans, and its shape is too strange, like some kind of alien technology. He had heard some stories about the destruction of strange civilizations around the Silver River Galaxy, but who had never seen it with his own eyes, and he didn't expect that he would hit him today. He hesitated for a moment, and decided to go intent. He took out a snail from his backpack, slid it on a slam at the edge of the pit, and slowly slid down. When his feet stepped on the surface of the dead body, he felt a strange shock, as if something was still moving. He was shocked, but he still walked forward with his head hard, and the crowbar held tighter. There is a crack on the surface of the slaughter, and it is pitch black inside, so you can hear some low-frequency buzzing sounds. Lin Jing swallowed, and plucked up his courage and walked in. It was even more distant than he thought. The walls on both sides of the channel are full of strange symbols, such as some language, and some luminous lines, as if indicating a direction. Lin Jing took the flashlight and took a photo, his heart pounding. This place feels so unfavorable, like a living creature's stomach. He walked a few steps, suddenly a hole came down and almost fell down. When he looked down, he saw a piece of metal fragment with a fist-sized crystal embedded on it, emitting a faint blue light. He lifted up and carefully found that this thing was not like an ordinary mine, with a smooth surface like a lens, and there seemed to be something moving inside. He was about to stuff his backpack when a sudden buzz sound in his brain, as if something was directly diamonding into his mind. He shook his hand and almost fell to the ground, but immediately he heard a cold sound coming from his brain. Check the biological signal and start the core connection agreement. Lin Jing was stunned and looked around and saw nothing, but the sound continued, identity confirmation. I am not a native user, the strong adaptation mode is activated. Then, he felt a strong stinging pain coming from his palm. When he looked down, he found that the crystal seemed to melt and penetrated into his skin. He wanted to throw it away, but he didn't hear the silence at all, and the whole person seemed to be controlled by something. It's done with the fit, and the control core has been settled. The voice finally stopped, and Lin Qing gasped, feeling that the whole person seemed to have just come out of the water, sweating all over. He looked down at his palm, and a light blue symbol appeared on his skin, like a certain mark. His brain is in a mess. What is this? Alien technology? Or something different? But before he could figure it out, the wall around him suddenly lit up, and the symbols and lines began to flash, and the entire slaughter seemed to be activated, and a deep slot appeared. Lin Jing panicked and turned around and wanted to run, but suddenly a shock under his feet, and the entire passage began to tilt, as if something was about to start. He stumbled and grabbed a bulge on the wall, barely calmed his body, and the sound came to his brain. The core destruction rate of Starship is 87%, the emergency repair mode is activated, please ask for user authorization. Authorization is nothing. Lin Jing couldn't help but conclude. He didn't understand these things, but when the voice fell, the sound responded coldly, authorization, the repair program is activated. Then, his eyes were blurred, as if he was pulled into a virtual space, and no data flow and images flashed through his brain, as if he was directly plugged into a bunch of knowledge. He was in pain, but he understood something: this thing, the core of control of a starship, and he has now inexplicably become its master. At this moment, a sudden burst of stomping sounds, and a deep conversation sound came from outside the dead body. Lin Jing suddenly returned to his senses, and his consciousness exited from the strange space, tightened to the corner of the passage, and turned off the flashlight. He held his breath and heard the silence outside, and he heard a sound of a sandy woman, saying, "It's okay, there is energy fluctuation here, it should be the desolation of lost technology. Notify the outpost team and prepare for recycling." Lin Jing's heart sank. This sound didn't sound like a person on the soil. The language was so strange, as if it was released from some translation equipment. He poked out carefully and looked out through the crack. He saw only a few figures wearing black armor standing by the pit, holding a weapon with a strange shape and some luminous symbols on his body, which looked very similar to the one on the skeleton. There was a thought in his brain: these guys were probably not human. He didn't dare to think too much, and quietly retreated back to the depth of the passage, his heart beating almost blowing. Who are these things? Why did it come here? Is it related to this starship? But no matter what, he knew he could not be arrested, otherwise his life would definitely be gone. He gritted his teeth and decided to hide it first and talk about it when the guys left. But at this moment, a low voice suddenly came from the depth of the passage, carrying a little smell of sausage. "Young man, if you don't want to die, don't be upset and come with me." Lin Jing was startled and turned around suddenly. He saw a tall and thin figure standing in the passage, wearing a broken cloak, a strange mask on his face, and a faint light flashing in his eyes. "Who are you?" Lin Jing subconsciously raised the crowbar and put his face on the ward. The man ignored his enemies and just said in a low voice, "I am Casar, and this place is not something you can stay in. Those guys are the outposts of the Star Eater Alliance to recycle this starship. If you want to survive, just listen to me." Lin Jing was stunned for a moment, with a lot of problems in his brain, but the black armored guys outside were getting closer and closer. He had no time to think too much, so he could only grit his teeth and point, "Okay, do whatever you say." Casar did not go away, turned around and walked deeper into the passage. Lin Jing followed closely, and couldn't help but mutter in his heart, "Who is this old man? Why do you know so much?" They walked through several narrow passages to a control room, surrounded by broken gantry panels and flash screens. Casar walked to a console, his fingers quickly operated on it, and said in a low voice, "Although this starship is almost as bad as it can be, the core is still useful. The mark on your hand shows that you have been chosen as its controller. However, now is not the time to explain, we have to get rid of those guys first." Lin Jing lowered his head and looked at the blue symbol on his hand. He still didn't understand what was going on, but he also knew that it was not the time to ask for the problem. He clicked and asked, "How can you get rid of them?" Casar looked at him, and his language was full of meaning. "Use the remaining energy of this starship to start a rush jump. However, I have to remind you that this thing is too bad and may fall apart after jumping, and we may also hang directly in the sea of stars." Lin Jing twitched, thinking that the old man was so unreliable, but the black armored guys outside were getting closer and closer, and he had no choice but to harden his head and say, "Okay, take a look." Castle clicked the head, pressed a button on the console with his fingers, and the entire control room suddenly vibrated, and a bunch of miscellaneous numbers were displayed on the screen. At the same time, the cold sound echoed in Lin Jing's brain: "Emergency jumping is done, the energy is insufficient, and the success rate is 43%. 43%? Lin Jing almost jumped up, but without waiting for him to complain, the vibration in the control room suddenly increased, as if the entire starship was about to be solved. Castle said in a low voice, "It's a sturdy person, young people, this is just the beginning." Lin Jing tied his teeth tightly and grabbed the handrail next to him. He couldn't help but wonder, what's going on? But he was a scavenger on the Wasteland, why was he suddenly thrown into this mess? At this moment, a rapid explosion sound came from the control room, like those black armored guys who discovered their silence and began to break the door. Lin Jing's heart was tightened, and his heart beat like a drum when he stared at the inverted screen. And Casar operated the console calmly, as if he had been accustomed to this kind of scene for a long time, and said in a low voice, "Don't panic, young people, the Sea of Stars is bigger than you think. If you survive, you will see more." Lin Jing didn't say anything, but just grabbed the handrail tightly, and the brain formed a group. He didn't know if this jump would be successful, nor why he would be selected, nor what the star-devouring alliance guys were. But he knew that from this moment on, his life had changed. The vibration became more and more intense, and the entire control room seemed to be thrown into a huge mixer. The metal plates on the wall squeaked and would fall apart at any time. Lin Jing grabbed the handrail tightly, his teeth bite sore, and his eyes were fixed on the number of jumps on the screen, the last few seconds left for the emergency jump. He was in a mess in his brain, and thought that if this broken starship really broke apart, he would probably turn into a scum in the Sea of Stars. The energy reserve is insufficient, and the success rate of jumping drops to 38%. The cold voice sounds in his brain again, as if he was deliberately stimulating his nerves. Lin Jing couldn't help but sneer, "Can you not report such broken numbers?" Casar, who was beside him, glanced at him, his temperament was so calm that it made people crazy. "Young people are useless to panic, and the jumping has already started. Now he can only listen to fate. Is it fate to hear the heaven?" Lin Jingxin was speechless, but before he could complain, a loud noise suddenly came from outside the control room, like those black armored men directly exploded the passage door. The rapid pace of the sound of the strange electronic sounds became closer and closer, and you could still hear a cold voice roaring in a strange word, "Closing the energy source, don't let them run away." Lin Jing's heart beats faster and he twisted his head toward Castle. "Old, they are coming in, can we still run away?" Castle didn't reply, and his fingers flew on the console, and a bunch of messy data was displayed on the screen, as if he was holding the last breath of this broken starship. He said in a low voice, "For a few more seconds, the jump engine is charging." "How many seconds?" Lin Jing felt that these few seconds were even longer than several years. The door of the control room was deformed by some heavy weapon. Several black armored figures could be seen in the cracks. The weapons in their hands emitted a faint blue light, as if they could turn this place into slag at any time. He swallowed, his palms were covered in cold sweat, and a thought suddenly flashed in his brain: if he was really stuck here, the code would be considered dead, which would be better than breaking the soil and stooping until old. At this moment, the inverted screen finally cleared, and the cold sound resounded again. Emergency jump starts, space folds begin. As soon as the voice fell, Lin Jing felt that the whole world was twisted, as if it was being torn open by some invisible force. His body seemed to be flattened and stretched, and his brain was buzzing, almost passing by directly. The lights in the control room flashed wildly, and the metal plates on the wall could not be stopped. Several blocks were directly shocked, revealing a bunch of burnt lines inside. "Get stable!" Casar roared, and Lin Jing reluctantly calmed down, staring at the screen, only to see a chaotic star on it, as if they were traveling through the space at some unbelievable speed. The sound of explosions and footsteps outside disappeared in an instant, replaced by a strange silence, as if the entire universe was quiet. After a few seconds, the vibration finally calmed down and the lights in the control room became more stable. Lin Jing gasped and felt as if he had just walked around the ghost gate. He relaxed the armrest and looked down at his palm. The blue symbol was still there, shining with light. He couldn't help asking, "Old, are we running away?" Casar leaned against the console, took off his mask and wiped his sweat, revealing a face full of patterns, with an indescribable sacred sack in his eyes. He clicked a little, his voice was low, "Just make sure you do it." He jumped quickly and threw us into a star field outside the gray core. The outpost team of the Star Eater Alliance could not catch up. However, the condition of this starship was worse than I thought. The jump engine was basically out of stock, and the energy was less than 5% left. Lin Jing was stunned for a moment when he heard this, and his brain had not completely reacted. He looked around and saw that the control room was in a mess, and only half of the star maps displayed on the screen could be seen clearly, and the other half was all in a bad way. He slammed his head and asked, "Then where are we now? Also, what is this Star-Eating Alliance? Why do you have to chase us?" Casar did not answer immediately, but walked to a broken screen and taped out a few blurry images, like a record of some kind of starship battle. He pointed to one of the huge shadows and said in a low voice, "The Star-Eating Alliance is one of the most powerful alien civilizations around the Silver River. They live by conquering and plundering. Any star field they like will be destroyed or enslaved. They pursue us because this starship it is an ancient civilization than the Star-Eating Alliance, with the lost technology they want." Lin Jing felt aroused from his heart, and couldn't help but look down at the symbol on his hand. "You said, this thing? What do they want to have to do with me?" Castle turned to look at him, with a complex emotion in his eyes. "Because you were selected. The control core of this starship has been determined by you, and only you can activate some of its key functions. If the Star-Eating Alliance catches you, it will dig out this technology at all costs, and may even dissect you directly." "Anatomy?" Lin Jing's mouth twitched, feeling a swelling on her back. He originally thought that this was just a break from selling big money, but he didn't expect that he would suffer such a big trouble. He was silent for a few seconds and asked, "What about you? Old man, how do you know so much? Also, why are you helping me?" Casar did not answer directly, but turned around to a corner of the control room, flipped out a small projection device from a pile of broken walls, and after activation it cast a holographic picture of a sea of stars. He pointed to one of the dark red areas and said in a low voice, "I am Casar, a senior commander of the Star Eater Alliance. But I opposed their policy of conquest, and was regarded as a traitor, and went into exile to the core of Grey. I help you because I don't want their treacherous success, and because the technology of this starship may be my only chance to punish." Lin Jing was stunned, not expecting that this old man would have such a big head. He had a lot of questions in his brain, but in the end he asked the most realistic one, "Then what should we do now? This broken ship is almost broken. The Star Eater Alliance will catch up with you. We can't hide all the time, right?" Castle clicked the head, turned off the projection, and his lingering spirit, "Disaster is not a long-term plan. The main force of the Star Eater Alliance will soon arrive in this star field. Their outpost team is just an appetizer. The only way is to repair this starship, find more lost technology escapes, strengthen our strength, and then counterattack." "Resistance?" Lin Jing almost laughed, "Only we? What kind of counterattack? This broken ship is free to fly. Casar ignored his complaints, but said coldly, it's not just us. The nucleus of the Grey and the rebels. They have been fighting against the advanced team of the Star Eater Alliance. We can go back first, contact them, repair the starship, and then plan for the next step. Lin Jing heard it half-believingly, but he also knew that there was no other way to go now. He clicked the head and asked, how can I go back? Can this ship still move? Casar walked to the console, checked the data, and said, I can move hard, but I have to manually adjust the navigation line to avoid the scanning range of Star-Eating Alliance. We have to be careful, this star field is not safe. In the next few hours, Lin Jing and Casar learned to operate this broken starship. Although there were some knowledge to control core infusion in the brain, they were still busy. Fortunately, Casar was experienced as an experienced Taoist, pointing him to keep his sailing line firmly and move slowly towards the direction of the Grey core. The outer shell of the starship kept squeaking sound, as if it would unwind at any time. Lin Qing's heart was drumming, but he could only hold it hard. Just as they approached the outside of the Grey core, the star's alarm suddenly began to sound, and the cold voice appeared again. Abnormal energy fluctuations were detected, and it was suspected that the enemy was approaching the unit. Lin Qing was nervous in his heart, and he looked at the screen tightly, only seeing a few red spots on the star far away, approaching them quickly. Casar's face darkened and he said in a low voice, it's the Star Eater Alliance's unmanned tracking. They come faster than I thought. What should I do? Lin Jing started sweating again. Casar did not hesitate and said directly, we can't fight hard, adjust the route, and land in the Wasteland Valley of the Ash Core. The terrain is complicated and can get rid of them at a time. Lin Jing pointed at the head, and hurriedly operated the console, and the star barely changed direction and turned down towards a valley area on the surface of the Ash Core. The landing process was as if I was riding a mountain car. The outer shell of the starship sparked sparks between the rock walls of the island valley, which shocked Lin Qing's teeth almost shattered. After finally landing, the starship emitted a heavy and finally stopped. Lin Jing wiped his sweat, hung on the seat, panting, saying, "Old, we are so hard." Casar ignored his complaints and quickly closed most of the star walking systems, saying in a low voice, "Don't relax, the unmanned machine is still nearby, we have to contact the rebels to let them come and respond." He took out an old communication device from the console, began to adjust the frequency, and tried to issue a distress signal. After a few minutes, the communication finally sent a rough female voice, with a little impatient, "Who is screaming at this frequency? Report your identity, otherwise I will just shut it off." Lin Jing heard this sound a little familiar, and Casar replied coldly, "I am Casar, carrying an important person and a starship. Now in the Wasteland Valley, I need to respond. The other party is Aaron Nova, right?" The head of the communications was silent for a few seconds, and then the female voice was surprised, "Casar? Are you still alive? Okay, report a seat, I will bring people over. But I warn you, if you are playing, I will collapse you first." After reporting the seat, Casar turned off the communications, and turned on the head to Lin Jing. "Irene is a member of the Resistance Army. She has a hot temper, but she relies on people. When she comes, we have to convince her to repair the Star Fleet together to fight the Star Fate Alliance." Lin Jing clicked a little, and felt a little nervous. He heard the name of Aaron Nova. Many people on the Wasteland said that she was a tough character. She had been fucking with an alien invader for several times, but she didn't expect to see a real person today. However, what he was even more worried was that the unmanned plane of the Star-Eating Alliance might find them at any time, and this broken starship didn't look like it would take for how long it would take. About half an hour later, a sound of an engine was heard from the mouth of the Islam Valley far away. Several modified sand cars appeared in the field. The armored car was covered with scratches. On the top of the car was a woman in a broken old battle uniform, holding a modified energy step in her hand. Her eyes were as sharp as a knife. She jumped out of the car and walked towards the starship, shouting, "Casar, roll me out." "Who is the important person you said?" Don't tell me that it's another waste. Lin Jing was a little unhappy when he heard this. He poked his head out of the dead body of the starship and said unhappily, "Who is the waste?" "My name is Lin Jing. I made this broken ship. If you have the ability, you can also get one to try." Erin was stunned for a moment, then narrowed her eyes and looked at him for a few seconds, and a sneer appeared on the corner of her mouth. "Okay, boy, I have a little temper. I hope you are not just showing off your abilities." Casar also walked out at this time and said in a deep voice, "Irene, don't waste time. The unmanned plane of the Starseed Alliance is nearby. We have to hide the starship and discuss how to repair it. This is the only hope to fight their main team at present." Irene glanced at the starship's slaying body, and pointed at it. "Okay, listen to you first. But I have to remind you, Casar, the Resistance Army is not a charity organization. If this is useless, you have to boil me." In the next few hours, the rebels helped cover the dead bodies of the starship with the disguised nets and sand, and temporarily avoided the unmanned scan. Lin Jing followed Erin and Casar to a secret point of the Resistance Army's deep valley. There were dozens of survivors on the Wasteland, most of whom were tired and numb on their faces, but there was a little dissatisfied in their eyes. In the temporary meeting room at the time, Erin briefly explained the situation. After hearing several heads of the rebel army, some people thought that repairing the starship was an opportunity, while others thought that it was purely seeking death. Lin Jing sat around and heard them quarrel, feeling a little impatient, and finally couldn't help but stand up and say, "What are you quarrels? The main teams of the Star-Devouring Alliance are coming. If we don't fight, we can't wait to be slaughtered. Although this starship is broken, it is at least a hope. It's better to sit there and wait." His words calmed down for a few seconds, and Erin turned to look at him, with a little more acknowledgement in her eyes. She pointed and said, "Boy said it right. Resistance is not a bad one, just fight. However, repairing a starship requires a lot of resources and parts. We have to search several waste spots on the waste soil, and we have to avoid the Star-Eating Alliance patrol. Who do you want to lead a team?" Lin Jing didn't think much and said directly, "I'll go. Although I'm not a big shot, this starship is determined to me." "No, I can't do it." Erin grinned and patted his shoulder. "Okay, there's something. Then let's go with me." Casar stays behind and is responsible for technical support. We have to start quickly, and time doesn't wait for anyone. In the next few days, Lin Jing and Irene took a small team to resist the army and began to search for resources in the Wasteland. They avoided the unmanned planes of the Star-Eating Alliance during the day, and dived into the bathroom at night and searched for parts. Although they were worried every time, they gradually took some useful things. Although Erin was not a polite person, she was fucked with Lin Jing in several dangerous moments, which made him admire this woman a little more. However, as time goes by, the patrols of the Star-Eater Alliance are becoming more and more frequent, and the scans of unmanned machines are getting bigger and bigger. Lin Jing was puzzled that he had a bad feeling. He knew that repairing the starship was only the first step, and the real challenge was still at the forefront. And the complicated eyes that Casar occasionally showed made him unable to help guessing whether this old man still had any unspeakable secrets. That night, they just returned from a scrap mining site and brought back a batch of key energy modules. Lin Jing was exhausted and sweaty. She sat on a stone outside the corner to rest. Erin walked over and threw him a bottle of synthetic water, saying, "Boy, I'm having a good time. But don't be too happy. The main team of the Star-Eater Alliance may arrive at any time. We have to make the worst plans." Lin Jing took the water, took a sip, and said, "I know. But, no matter what, we have to try. The core of Grey is my home, and I don't want to watch it trampled under the feet by those aliens." Erin heard it, was silent for a few seconds, and then said in a low voice, "Okay, with this scoundrel, we still have hope." In the distance, several red spots flashed through the night sky, like an unmanned aircraft of the Star-Eating Alliance patrolling the rules again. Lin Jing looked at the red spots, her heart tightened and held the water bottle in her hand. He knew that the real battle was coming soon. The gray core under the night was still the dead-stricken appearance. the Wasteland Valley was covered by a thin fog. Occasionally, there were several low engine sounds coming from the sky, like the unmanned aircraft of the Star-Eating Alliance whirled away. Lin Jing sat on a broken stone outside the holding the bottle of half-drink synthetic water in his hand, staring at the perplexing red spots in the sky, and his heart seemed to be pressed against the stone, heavy. He knew that there was not much time left, and although the progress of repairing the Star-Walking Alliance could barely keep up, the main fleet of the Star-Walking Alliance might at any time be suppressed, leaving them with little chance. Erin walked out of the spot, carrying a handful of energy guns that had just been wiped, and there was still the impatient expression on her face. She glanced at Lin Jing, leaned her gun against the stone wall next to her, and said, "What's wrong, boy? Are you stupid again? If you don't move, we will never have the last chance to try." Although her verb was hard, Lin Jing could hear it, and there was a little concern hidden inside. He slammed his head, stood up and patted the sand on his body, and said in a low voice, "I didn't feel stupid, I just felt, this matter is getting worse and worse. The patrol rate of the Star-Eater Alliance is getting higher and higher, and the unmanned aircraft are about to fly to our heads. They must know what we are fucking. Let's fix the starship. Can you really fight head-on with them?" Erin heard it, was silent for a few seconds, and then sneered, "Head on head? What are you thinking? Are we going to die? Repairing the starship is the first step, but if we really want to fight with their main team, we must have a plan, otherwise we will just touch the stone with a chicken egg." Lin Jing clicked the head a little, and said nothing more, and turned around and walked back to the point with Erin. The atmosphere inside was more stressful than outside. The rebels gathered together in 3 or 3, some were checking weapons, some were discussing lowly, and their faces were filled with fatigue and anxiety. Casar sat in front of a temporarily built console, in front of him a bunch of broken parts removed from the dead of Starship, and a pile of messy data was displayed on the screen. He raised his head and looked at Lin Jing, and his words were calm. "The compatibility test of the energy module has been completed and can be used hard. Starship's core system has been repaired by 70%, but the weapon system and protection layer are still a big problem. We have to find another batch of high-density alloys." Lin Jing heard a little too big and couldn't help asking, "Old, we're almost turning the waste soil upside down. Were there any rare goods like high-density alloys?" Casar did not answer directly, but instead tuned out a vague star, pointing to an area north of the gray core and said, "Here, a military point in the old era. I heard that when the human colonies were just built, there were a lot of strategic resources and we should have what we needed. However, that place had been abandoned long ago, and now it is the patrol area of the outpost team of the Star-Eater Alliance, and the risk is very high." Erin heard it, browsed and interrupted, "You have to go even if the risk is high. Otherwise, if the starship is not repaired properly, we will not have the chance to run. Lin Jing, you bring a team of people with me and you will set off at dawn tomorrow, and fight quickly." Lin Jing was still a little nervous, but he also knew that there was no way out now and could only hold his head hard. The next morning, they took a small team to resist the army, started a few modified sand trucks, and headed towards the North military site. The desert of the Gray Core is as deserted as ever, and the sand is shattering, so the team can only move forward at low speed to avoid the scant area of the Star-Eating Alliance without humans. After a few hours, they finally approached the spot, a ruin half buried under the sand, with several broken guard towers standing crookedly, as if they would collapse at any time. Lin Jing jumped out of the car, swept around with an old detector, and said in a low voice, "The signal shows that there is indeed a metal reaction here, and it should be what we are looking for. However, the patrol team of the Star-Eating Alliance may be nearby. We will move in and out quickly." Erin pointed at the head and quickly assigned the task. She brought a team to the alert, while Lin Jing led another team to the ruins and plundered. The air in the ruins was even worse, full of iron and rotten smells. Lin Jing carried people carefully through a broken corridor, and finally found a bunch of old-age packing boxes in an underground warehouse. When I opened it, I found that there were indeed several high-density alloy plates that were well preserved. Although the surface was a little corrosive, it was hard to use. He relaxed his voice and urged people to move things away, but at this moment, the detector suddenly issued a rapid alarm, and several red spots that were quickly approaching were displayed on the screen. The patrol team of the Star-Eating Alliance. Lin Jing felt nervous and contacted Aaron through the communication device. "We were discovered. If you get the things, please withdraw." The voice on Aaron was a little urgent. "I received it. There was a fire outside. You can come out quickly, we have to suddenly get out." The voice fell, and an explosion sound came from afar, followed by the sharp chin of energy weapons. It was obvious that Aaron and the others had already fucked the enemy. Lin Jing gritted his teeth, and quickly rushed out with the metal plate on his shoulder. As soon as he left the ruins, he saw Aaron carrying several people against a wall. On the other side were several Star-Eating Alliance soldiers wearing black armor. The weapons in his hands shot out blue beams, hitting sand and soil. He rushed over, squatted beside Irene, and asked in a low voice, "How can it be suddenly blocked?" Irene gritted her teeth and said without looking back, "It's hard to say, they don't have many people, but their firepower is too strong. We have to find a gap, otherwise we have to explain it all." Lin Jing's brain flew quickly, his eyes swept over the surrounding terrain, and noticed that there was a narrow sand path along the ruins, leading to a low-lying belt, which should be able to avoid firepower at a time. He said in a low voice, "Retreat there, the terrain can cover it, let's retreat." Aaron pointed his head and quickly ordered everyone to move towards the sand path. After Lin Jingzhang took a few people, he used the modified electromagnetic gun in his hand to repeatedly suppress the opponent's attack. After finally retreating to the sand road, they realized that the situation was worse than they thought. The Star-Eating Alliance patrol team called for reinforcements, and several unmanned aircraft appeared in the sky far away, making a low buzzing sound, as if they were locking their positions. Aaron summoned a dirty word and turned to Lin Jing, "Boy, we have to fight hard. If these unmanned people lock us up, the team will not be able to escape. Do you have any tricks?" Lin Jing tied his teeth tightly, and a crazy idea suddenly flashed in the sea of his brain. He lowered his head and looked at the blue symbol on his palm and said in a low voice, "I'm trying to use the starship core to interfere with their signal. Although this thing is not around, Casar said that I have some kind of remote connection with it, and I may not be able to do it." Aaron was stunned for a moment, then pointed, "Okay, take a look, hurry up." Lin Jing closed his eyes and tried to concentrate. Sure enough, some vague data flows appeared in the brain, like the remaining signal at the core of the starship. He gritted his teeth and tried to adjust the signals to send out a wave of interference. After a few seconds, the unmanned aircraft far away had a short stop, as if the signal was beaten. Aaron saw the situation and Lima ordered, "Where you now, run." The team quickly started and ran towards the direction of the island valley. Although they reluctantly got rid of the pursuers, they paid a lot of money. Several people in the team were injured and the sandy car was damaged. After returning to the spot, Lin Jing was so tired that he was directly on the ground, and his brain was still buzzing. Just then, the distance connection made him feel as if he had been squeezed out all his energy. Casar walked over, checked the symbol on his hand, and said with a brow, "You are overusing the core. Don't try again in the short term, otherwise your consciousness may collapse." Lin Jing smiled bitterly and gasped, "Old, there's nothing wrong with it. If you don't need this thing, we'll have already hung up." Casar didn't say anything, but just silently turned around and checked the alloy plate that was just brought back. In the next few days, the rebels worked overtime and used these materials to repair the core protection layer of the starship and some weapon systems. Although it was still broken like a sieve, it could at least fly and open a few cannons. But just as they were preparing for their first trial, the alarm system of the point suddenly began to rise, and a dense red spot was displayed on the screen, approaching quickly from the outer star field of the gray core. Casar's face darkened and he said in a low voice, "The main force of the Star-Eating Alliance is here." Lin Jing felt nervous and ran over to look at the screen. He saw dozens of huge starships on the star map. He was wearing a black warship with strange shapes, like the bones of some giant creature. There were countless small battle machines around him, which made people breathless. Aaron gritted her teeth and whispered, "This help is shattering, so fast." She turned to Casal and asked, "Old, do we have any chance?" Casal was silent for a few seconds, and said, "Their firepower is 10 times that of ours. However, there is a lost technology hidden in the core of the starship, the Starcore engine. If it can be activated, we may be able to reverse the situation. But the price is very high, and starting the engine requires a person to directly integrate with the core, which is basically a single ticket." Lin Jing was shocked when he heard it. There were a lot of thoughts in his brain, but he didn't hesitate for too long and said directly, "I'm here. I'm the owner of this broken ship. I can't do it, right?" Casar looked at him, with a little more complicated emotion in his eyes, and he was slow. "Yes, only you can do it. But I have to remind you that this is not only a sacred person, but may even be swallowed by the engine. Are you sure?" Lin Jing grinned and said lightly, "Is it true? And if I am not sure, is it true? I can't let these alien shatters trample our home." "Fuck." Aaron heard it, patted his shoulder, and his voice was a little low. "Boy, there is something. Don't worry, we will fight for you for time." In the next few hours, all the members of the Resistance Army set out, drove the repaired starship and several temporarily modified battle boats, and launched a crazy raid towards the Star-Eating Alliance's fleet. They knew that this was not for the win, but to delay time and give Lin Jing the opportunity to start the satellite nuclear engine. The battle was unusually fierce from the beginning. The firepower of the Star-Eating Alliance came like a storm. The fighter boats that resisted the army were knocked down, and the outer shells of the starship were also hit thousands of holes. Lin Jing sat in the control room, pressing his palm on the core interface, and his brain was full of data impacts, as if the whole person was torn to pieces and reorganized. He gritted his teeth and forced himself to complete the final fusion step. Finally, he heard the cold sound. The Starcore engine is activated, and the energy output reaches the limit. At the same time, the star suddenly burst out with a terrifying energy wave, as if it was igniting a small sun, directly tearing the forward shape of the Star-Eating Alliance fleet. Far away, on the flag of the Star-Eating Alliance, Zelax stood on the guide platform, watching all this coldly. His voice was transmitted through the communication channel, carrying a cold mockery. "Humans are a little bit clever. But do you think this can stop us? The will of the Star-Eating Alliance cannot be stopped." Lin Jing heard this voice, grinned reluctantly, and said in a low voice, "I can't stop it, and you have to let you lose your flesh. Come on, shatter." The energy of the Starcore engine exploded suddenly, and the star-shaped plane turned into a dazzling light, rushing towards the flag of the Star-Eating Alliance, and colliding with the other party's protection barrier. The explosion of the storm waves swept across the entire star field, and countless fragments and energy flows spread in the air, like a scattered smoke. The survivors who resisted the army watched this scene far away. Some were silent and some were whispering the curse, but more people had an unyielding light ignited in their eyes. The explosions dissipated, and although the Star-Devouring Alliance's fleet was extremely frustrated, the flag still stood firm. Zarek's voice rose again, carrying a burst of anger. "Humans, you won this game, but the battle has not ended. The Star-Devouring Alliance's revenge will make you regret today's choice." After speaking, the remaining fleet retreated and disappeared into the depths of the star field. At the Agu point of the Ash's core, the rebels were silently cleaning up the slaughter. Lin Jing's feud allowed them to keep their homes, and for the first time the human race stood straight in front of alien invaders. Casar stood beside the star-stealing bones, staring down at a burnt control panel, muttering, "Young man, you did it, but this is just the beginning." He turned around and found an encrypted data from a bunch of broken cages, recording the technical details of the Starcore engine, and some traces of internal conflicts in the Star-Eating Alliance. Aaron walked over and said with a little sad voice, "Old, what should I do next?" Lin Jing is gone, but his business cannot be done in vain. Casal pointed at it and said, "Transfer these technologies to the Human Alliance so that they know that people with the core of Grey are not easy to bully. Also, there is no group within the Star-Eater Alliance, and Zelax's rule is not a piece of iron plate. We may have a chance." The night was once again covered with ash core. In the starry sky, a faint light flashed a moment, like a signal or a person's will, still flying in the sea of stars. The rebels raised their heads, looked at the endless darkness, and held the weapons in their hands tightly. They knew that this battle was far from over, and the legend left by Lin Jing would become the fire of their continued battle.